Hello and welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, I wanted to quickly address something from my previous video and the one before that had like the long gap in between them in terms of schedule dates. You may have noticed that I definitely repeated some TypeScript concepts and component code that I actually covered in that previous version. So apologies on having a lot of redundant content between those two videos. So I wanted to apologize for that and apologize for any confusion that it may have caused going, didn't we already cover this stuff in a previous video? However, my hope is that the repetition at least served as something somewhat valuable reinforcement. As I continue to learn and grow as a developer, I find that my understanding of these concepts evolves and allows me to explain them better each time I go through making YouTube videos or curriculum content here at Covalence. Or anytime I hang out with a student and they ask me questions, or a mentor session and they ask me questions that I'm not entirely familiar with, so we have to kind of research and learn and grow together, right? Or even seeing a student implement or YouTube commenters implement something in a clever way that helps me learn as well, which is why I love doing this. So thank you for bearing with me on this journey of continuous learning. But with that out of the way, now on to today's video, which is a very exciting topic that I alluded to at the end of last video, where we're going to enhance our user experience by introducing confirmation modals, because you saw that we can just straight up delete notes by complete accident by just hovering over the button and clicking on it, and boom, it's gone. Probably not something we want to have happen in the real world. I mean, if this is our own side project, so be it, just be careful, but that's probably not a good idea for our actual end users. Right. I mean, we can accidentally delete something, and that's probably not a good idea. So we're going to start with an easy prompt asking if our user is sure to do so, and then we're going to build an actual modal out. Now, I could cop out and take the easy way and grab Sweet Alerts or some other modal library that makes it very easy to add them, makes them very robust and accessible. But I'm going to choose to do things the hard way and code our own, which will actually teach us a little bit extra of React's API. And I feel like it'll make for a really good lesson in this video and teach y'all something really cool. So we're going to be using a fantastic tool in React's arsenal called the ReactDOM createPortal method. If you're unfamiliar with it, no worries. We're going to go over what it is today, how to use it, and why it's so beneficial when working with modals, pop-ups, and other things like that, as well as some tips and caveats when using it, because there are some things you have to keep in mind that broke my brain the first time I learned about it. And lastly, if there's some time left over, I'm going to improve some things in Postman, in our Postman collection, because it's going to be a pretty key step before we begin adding more and more features on the back end that will translate to cool things in the front end. So if you're ready to make this application a wee bit more user-friendly and learn something about React's toolkit, well, here we go. Let's get started. Right on. So like I had mentioned, we have this pesky issue of this thing being immediately allowed to be deleted without any kind of prompt whatsoever. We just click on the delete button. If we go over here to the browser, why is the browser not showing up? Oh, I have the wrong scene. There we go. So I've logged out here. Let's log back in to the lovely profile page. Looks like I never got around to developing, but again, we don't really have a profile built out yet for our users or a query for it. We'll get there. That'll be one of the features we're going to work on soon enough. But like I said, I've been messing with my notes, so again, y'all might have different sets of notes here. You might just go into Postman, add a few more, or, I mean, heck, you can just go to the add note, get some DnD ipsum, or type some gobbledygook in, you're good to go. But like I had mentioned, we have this issue where I can just click on this button and the note will vaporize right away. That's probably not something we want to have happen. Errors? Oh yeah, so the validate errors for when I refresh the app when I logged out and cleared local storage. We have to code a logout button too, don't we? Now that I think about it. Anyway, so we have that issue, right? We can just delete this note, and that's not going to be a great user experience for anybody, ourselves included, should we happen to accidentally delete something. So we can actually cheese it very simply. Ultimately, if this is your temporary placeholder, that's fine. We can just fire a window confirm that will return I think truth is a Boolean value. It returns a Boolean value if our user confirms okay. So we're going to say, are you sure you want to delete this note, ? Hint of worry, and then run our asynchronous code just like that to talk to our server. And again, this is a great placeholder for any of your delete functions to write in here and add like a comment or note that says, fill this out with a modal later, please. But for right now, a simple prompt is an easy way to make sure that we don't run into trouble. Yeah, it's running, just making sure. This note stinks, and as long as I click OK, the note will be deleted, but if I don't, then the note won't be deleted, right? I don't know why I just do accents. But yeah, so we click cancel and nothing happens. But if we clicked OK, the note would be deleted. So let's just grab this text really quick and confirm it works. Do I sure want to delete this note? Yeah, I do. Okay, it's gone. I have no notes. He's got no notes, folks. One of the key features of this app. I'm going to go ahead and jot that down. There we go. I'm going to go back. Let's see. Let's add another note since we're going to be kind of messing with them here. All right, cool. So now we have a couple of notes happening here from our lovely guest writer that are the exact same 2 notes written on the exact same day. It is the okay, cool. I was going to laugh if these were not those days on this video release date. Okay. So like I said, that is an easy, like, placeholder-y way that can be quickly added to make sure that accidental deleting of notes doesn't happen until you decide what you want to do further, which is what we're going to do today. We are going to learn how to add a modal here and discuss React's createPortal method and how we can use it. So, right on. Here we go. ReactDOM createPortal. Do we have anywhere that ReactDOM is imported? Yeah, we do. Right here. I don't know if this is the same one I want, because this is the client one. Does it have it on there? Let's find out. Because I know the vanilla, like, just ReactDOM import without /client. Yeah, this one does not have createPortal because it's just meant for... It is just meant for the rendering of our new root application. So scratch that. Head over back to the top of note details. I'm going to go ahead and give you all a quick little lesson. This is less about coding, unless you really want to code along with this one. This is going to be more about a quick lesson in how portals work and what their purpose is. So, like I said, ReactDOM, it is the library that bridges our React code. And remember, our React code, we mentally picture this thing as a giant nested tree of objects. Like, it's objects all the way down. Our app is an object that has the children of our entire app, which happens to be, oh my goodness, Luke, this is embarrassing. Get to the app here, homie. Right, it has our browser router, all these components, our provider, our toast container, all of our routes, all these other components that render to the page. That is the big nested tree of objects. ReactDOM is what takes that tree of objects and generates the tree and hierarchy of elements in the DOM. And it has certain ways of escaping that process, because sometimes we need something to render outside of our div. Because remember, our index.html, everything renders in this one root div, but there's several occasions where we need to not have that happen. For example, a modal, a pop-up, or something like that. They typically need to be appearing on top, and we have to not get destroyed by our own CSS in order for that to happen. And it makes it much easier and accessible for screen readers to find this element when it's not nested in this giant mess of a root div with all of our React stuff appearing inside of it, all those elements being translated into it, right? So it's a method by ReactDOM that allows us to render a child DOM into a DOM node that exists outside the hierarchy of that DOM component. So what does that mean? Again, I can make a root div here, like that I can then specifically find, target, and put our modal into so it appears outside of the hierarchy of our entire React application, right? In other words, it's when we want to place a child component into the DOM, but the location of the DOM tree is not nested in the same way. So, had we made a modal component and displayed it normally, it would appear as whatever child in this massive root div it's going to appear, but we don't want that. We want it to appear as a child outside of that render tree, which we can do so with createPortal. Like the name kind of implies, it's going to be creating a portal to break out of the parent container, aka our root, into our own custom div or element. It doesn't have to be a div, our own element instead. So it breaks out of the parent container, so we can use modal, pop-ups, and tooltips, toasts, things like that are very common usage for these kinds of portals. That's what the portal is for. It's to create these kind of things, right? So ultimately, it's pretty simple to take a look at here. CreatePortal is a function. What does it have to say about it? Yeah, so we can provide multiple arguments. And we need to provide children, which will be a React node, and a container, which will be the element that we're going to be choosing to target this thing like that. So the children will be basically the code of our modal, its appearance and things like that. And the container, I believe, will be where we select it to appear, right? Yeah, so this container will be ultimately this thing in the index HTML. So while I added this here as an example, if y'all are sitting back and kind of absorbing this lecture, then go ahead and add this modal root into your index HTML, because we're gonna have to prepare for this. And while I'm here, I changed my name from DnD Note Taker, right? It's no longer the Note Taker. It is DnD Note Master. So we'll do DnD Note Master as my title. There we go. Okay, 2 birds, 1 stone, this index HTML. That's what we're talking about here, folks. All right, we have createPortal. We've talked about child and container. And to make a simple example of a modal, I mean, all it has to be is, a modal can be as simple as this. At the end of the day, it's still just going to be a JSX component, which is at its simplest a function. It needs to create a div, so we can do something like this. I probably wouldn't do it this way, but it's going to work. L for element, document dot. We haven't done this. Vanilla DOM. Vanilla DOM stuff, help teach this on the regular in our full stack course with students coming into the basics of introduction to web development, but maybe it's been a hot minute since y'all have to do this one. And then we can have, for example, a use effect. No, that's not right. I was like, that syntax seems off. A use effect that says, hey, when this thing appears, we're going to have some kind of modal root, like a variable that was our selected modal root for the container. And we're going to say, I want it to append child of my modal element. And when this component unmounts, I want you to remove it. So we're going to use that cleanup function of the use effect in order for us to make sure our modal root element is removed, or not our modal root, but our modal is removed from the modal root. So then it goes back to the normal workflow. And then from there, we just have to make sure we return it would be a ReactDOM.createPortal of our whatever our children are going to be. So we'd have like props.children if this is an actual modal component. Again, we'll code it out here in a second. I just wanted to give you all an example of what it might look like. And then we'd have our element, I'm pretty sure, like that. So it'd be something akin to this, as simple as it needs to be. Now, it doesn't look very fancy, but it would get the job kind of done. Right, so why is this important for modals? Modals have to appear above other content, and ReactPortal makes it much easier to do that by allowing us to render the component right at the end of the body tag, which is a common place to add them, right? So that's what createPortal's main purpose is going to be here for our modal that we're going to code here in just a moment. It also does help something with overflow and clipping. If anyone out there coming to this little free YouTube course has some development experience already, there is a 100% chance you probably have had some issues with overflow hidden or z-index styles clipping or screwing up the rendering of your child components. Portals can be useful to break out of that mess so you can have your components display correctly. So that's something else to keep in your tool belt. You're going, hey, I'm having a lot of z-indexing and clipping and overflow issues with this component tree. Oh, I can just skip the component tree, go render it directly into the DOM elsewhere, and be done with it and not have to mess with my styles. Something to keep in mind, though, remember earlier I mentioned something broke my brain when I was trying to learn how to use portals to make modals, because again, that's how I learned it. Event bubbling. I guess I should explain this. This is supposed to be like a free course, and I'm trying to make some assumptions that y'all know what's going on here, but can't guarantee that. I have a sandbox for this. I have a CodePen, I think. I'll link it in the description down below. I'm pretty sure I have a CodePen. Log in. Log in with GitHub. I should edit this out. Dead air, Luke. Dead air. Yeah, let's go! All right. I have a lovely CodePen here that I made for some students a long time ago. I call it Event Bubbling, or Bubble Bobble, if y'all, this is showing my age. Get in the comments if you remember Bubble Bobble. I love that game as a kid. So this is Event Bubbling that I made for a student to show them what that is, right? Don't worry about the HTML and CSS. She ain't important. What is important is the fact that I have a few elements. I called them box 1, 2, and 3, but I think I styled them to look like bubbles instead because that makes more sense for my theme here, Bubble Bobble. But we call them box 1, 2, and 3. I don't remember which way they're stacked. I selected all 3 of them, and what I ended up doing is I added, so box 1 is purple, box 2 is blue, and then box 3 is green. And if we look at the HTML, so it is important. I lied. Check it out. I have the boxes nested because all of your React components would also be nested like this in that one singular root div. So I have 3 individual box elements, selected 3 individual box elements, and I individually added a click event listener to each box, right? And the question is, why does clicking the green square cause the above 2 to log? So let's check it out. Open the console, zoom out a little bit. Sorry if it's going to be hard to see y'all, but bear with me. If I click on purple, I get purple box has been clicked right here in the console window. If I click blue, notice we get blue and purple logging. And if I clear the console and click green, we get all 3. This is event bubbling in a nutshell. Help, I'm in a nutshell. So that's what event bubbling is. A click event propagates up the tree. So if I click on the inner box, it will bubble up to its parent, which is box 2. And box 2 also has a click event, and it will make that one fire. Then it will keep bubbling up to the parent, which is box 1, and I'll make that fire. So this is what event bubbling is. That event will bubble up the parent tree and will fire off all events of the same kind. So all click events clicked on the child will trigger click events to fire on all of its parents, right? So to do that, we can actually solve this one fairly easily, which is stop propagation. That's a possible solution. So if I add it here and clear the console and go back to looking at the lovely bubbles, click on green, now we get the green one firing off only and not the other 2. This is an issue that you're going to have to keep in mind when messing with ReactDOM and React component hierarchy and then DOM hierarchy as well. Event.stop propagation has a corresponding, I think it's the same one, honestly, has the same effect in React because it will follow the same rules. It will bubble up the events. So we got to make sure that we keep that in mind. So we have to note that, but here's the brain breaking part. You're saying, okay, Luke, but that shouldn't be a problem here, right? Because we're going to use a portal to make sure that the modal with the click events is outside of our root, which might have a whole bunch of elements that have individual click events. So, hey, dog, you ain't got to worry about it, right? Wrong. An important thing to note about portals is that they follow React's event bubbling, meaning an event fired from inside a portal will propagate to ancestors in the React component tree, even if those elements are not ancestors in the DOM tree. This can be very shocking and annoying and a hard lesson to learn that I had to figure out myself, but I'm here teaching you. But it's part of how React unifies things between portals and normal React children. So we have to know that clicking on this modals buttons that fire click events might fire other click events inside of our component tree. So we're going to be thinking in our application, where is our modal component appearing in our React tree, not where is it appearing in our DOM tree. So that's the big thing here, right? Event bubbling is still going to work via the components ancestry and not the DOM ancestry. Something else to keep in mind is CSS inheritance is an issue. Portals render elements outside of your parent component, so styles defined in the parent component are not going to be automatically applied to those children. So anything you apply in like a parent component, again, that won't matter because that style won't be applied to this modal root. So sometimes you have to worry about that. You're going to have to make sure your styles are globally accessible and not scoped to some component and passed down somehow, right? And then, that's just the big notes I wanted to throw out about React createPortal and some caveats to it here. So we got our modal root div here. We've talked about createPortal and all this kind of fun stuff. And now we're probably left wondering, how are we actually going to make a modal? Let's go make one. In our components directory, we're going to make a new modal.tsx. I don't have anything to not have to import React. I believe we're going to write some JSX here. So we're going to import React from React. We're going to import ReactDOM from ReactDOM. This is also one of the first times that myself and a lot of students that I've taught over the years in React, this is like the only time they began writing import ReactDOM anywhere other than their index entry point. So we've leveled up by importing this thing from somewhere else for once. I'm going to go ahead and make sure we have our root selected. So I'm going to say our modal root is going to be a document.getElementById of modal-root. And because I'm a paranoid man, I'm going to confirm that's what I called it, modal-root. Okay, cool. So we have our modal root selected. I'm not worried about putting this in state or ref or something like that. This is a fine global variable to have accessible should it be needed. Because we're making this variable outside of the scope of a React component, it is globally accessible. And thankfully, it's a const, so it should not be easily manipulated, right? But you're never going to have multiple modals on the screen at the same time, probably, so that would be considered a sync. So that shouldn't be an issue for us with this modal root selector being a global variable. Let's go ahead and write out our interface. We'll call it pmodal, modal props. And it's going to have 3 methods. We're going to have, or 2 methods and a property. It's going to have some React children because we're going to have something displayed. We need to have a way to close our modal, so it's going to be a function that doesn't return anything. It's probably going to set some state or something like that. And the same thing on confirm, like meaning they say, yeah, I want to confirm this modal. We're going to have an onConfirm like that to make sure that some kind of function is, like, it's going to be a function that runs that will ultimately do something and close the modal. So there you go. That is our modal props. So let's go ahead and make our modal equals props, modal props, booyakasha. And while we're here, let's go ahead and just destructure the stuff. So I'll say children, on close, on confirm. Hello, Percival. Why are you sitting over there, dude? You don't normally sit there. He's just right off camera over here. All right, he might come say hi in the video. I'm not going to force him. All right. Like I said, it has to create. We're going to create an actual div element to be appending this modal here. So we're going to say const L equals document dot create element, a div element like such. Then we're going to have our use effect here. So we're going to say a use effect. Our use effect is going to happen on the initial rendering of this modal, where it's going to be, hey, modal root, I want you to append a div child to the DOM here. Not div, L. What the hell? There we go, L. And then cleanup function, just in case this thing needs to disappear, we're going to have a cleanup that says remove that child element from the DOM as well. Then from there, like I said, we're going to return a call to ReactDOM.createPortal like that. And like I said, the second argument is the container, which will be the element, right? So this is the root in the HTML. This is the container that will have our modal inside of it. And that is the container we're going to be wishing to create here, right? That's the goal. So we're going to go ahead and code out our modal now. It's going to be a div, surprise, surprise. Can I new line this? No, not yet. So for class names, we are going to use fixed top 0, left 0, flex, items center. What else? Justify center. Justify center. Width is full. Height is full. BG-black. And then BG opacity of 50. So that right there, all those class names is going to be making the like kind of darkened screen behind our modal, because you know that whenever you open a pop-up or something like that, typically the content behind it gets dimmed out. So it's a very obvious thing that to our users that what is happening is that clear overlay is kind of darkened overlay is coming around right there. And then from there, we can actually create our modal itself. So let's go make the modal itself, which will be a div with a few class names on it. Let's add some padding. Let's make it a white background note, so it should stand out, pop pretty hard against that kind of darker, opaque background behind it. We're gonna make it a rounded border as well, and box shadow. Box shadow is always good. Good. Alrighty then. From there, we need to actually have some text appear, so we can have like an H2, bump content down below it to make sure it is fairly visible. Font-bold, text-primary, that will say delete note like that. Looking good in the neighborhood, folks. Beneath that div, let's go ahead and have a paragraph that will bump the buttons. This will bump the buttons, the action buttons, down some. The paragraph will be less big than the header above it, and we'll make it secondary text to complement the primary text. There we go. Are you sure you want to delete this note? Percy, you gotta choose, dude. You can't have it both ways. And tail flick in front of the camera. No, he's stretching. There it is. Thank you, cat. Yes, please sit right in front of my notes so I can't read them. That's not gonna work, homie. Just come say hi for the video. There, baby. Look at him. I don't know if he'll sit in my lap or not. Right, so we have this confirmation text appearing, and then let's go ahead and create our action buttons. We'll do a div of flex. Let's justify them buttons between themselves like so, and then we're going to have... oh yeah, I have button components that I talked about for a second time in the last video. We're going to import that to use. Import button from the button right there. Now, I chose to do it from button here and not from the index file because I don't want like this being exported from the index file and also importing something from the index file to create possibly a circular reference, which could be very problematic. So I'm choosing just to import it directly from the button code itself, considering the modal is also in the components directory right here. So yeah, I had that button right there. So we're going to do a button element. This one will be confirm. We're going to copy, we're going to copy and paste said button and make this one a cancel. And what's going to happen is I need to color on both these buttons. I'll do ghost for the cancel because I don't want it to pop out and immediately get your attention. I'll have primary on that one. Both of these are going to receive an onClick handler, which will be the destructured onConfirm for the confirm button, and then on close for the close button. So we're going to make sure that the component choosing to render a modal will have the logic for the buttons. We want to pass them in because we can't code them here, or we shouldn't code them here because they need to be quickly reusable, right? Like, I don't want to have to write individual modals for individual actions. I will have the parent rendering the modal. I mean, parent rendering the modal, you know what I mean with the portal stuff here. Wherever the modal is appearing, that component will handle whatever logic, because the note details page that deletes a modal is where I want this code to exist, right? Where I want that logic to exist. So I'll pass them in as onConfirm and onClose functions. From there, I believe that is it for our modal to have this action happen. So we're going to see if it ends up working or not here. It seems like it should work. Okay. Yeesh. So now we actually got to make this modal active somewheres, right? Yeah, okay, so we're going to go back to our note details page. Oh, just kidding. We're going to go back to our components index so I can add that's views index. My apologies. We need to go to component index and add our modal. It's a build. I would say it's a building block. That's not really a building block. It's more like like a miscellaneous. Like, we don't use modals to build out things like that, right? Oh, I forgot to write the export statement, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Bada bing, bada boom. Nothing to it. Okie dokie, artichoke. So there's our modal. Let's import this for use now. This component already has some state being set, but we're going to have a new one here. We need to have some control of state. Again, that can be easily inferred, but we're trying to practice TypeScript here together. So like right there, we're going to be using a modal. We're going to call it show modal and set show modal. It's like debating like a good variable name there. So we're going to have a Boolean to control the appearance of said modal, and that'll help us do the onClose function for it as well. So, yeah. Yeesh. Okie dokie. So, yeah. Continuing on, let's have some logic to actually show our modal here, because that's going to be kind of important to have. So let's see. We need to, again, it doesn't really matter because the modal is going to break wherever this thing is in. I have this thing wrapped in a fragment, probably from some experimenting off screen. So there's the container for all the note detail code. So outside of that container, but inside the fragment, I will say, if the show modal Boolean is true, I would like for it to show my modal, right? So I will say render my modal component. And like I said, it needed some kind of function. So I'll say the onClose will be a call to my set modal show to toggle it to false like that. And I'll say the same thing for my onConfirm. I'll also give it the same one for now that will simply turn the modal off. So both buttons should turn the modal off, and we'll talk about later getting in there. So I didn't provide any children. I thought we were going to I figured we are going to wrap something, but maybe I was overthinking it. Let's go back to the modal and make the children property an optional property for now, just to fix the TypeScript error, saying, it could wrap something. I don't know. Maybe it won't, right? Because I did code it kind of directly, didn't I? I said, are you sure you want to delete this note? Maybe I should pass it in as what the contents are going to be. Because I said, like, yeah, it's not hard. Let's not hard code it to be right thing for this only. And I realized that we probably should have like a title and subtext. For now, let's just get it working, and then I'll fix it in post. My favorite phrase. Yeah, but for now, I just want it to be appearing. I want to see it and how it actually looks like and what it does. So rather than this button handling the delete, let's go up to handle delete, and we're going to comment out the current handle delete code because it's going to switch to just doing this, which will be set modal show to true is the only code that will end up using right there. So, all right. Let's take a look to see what happened. Hard refresh. Notes. Full note. Why are they stacked? Oh, because I was zoomed in at least one level. Hey, look at that. So, like I said, that BG opacity, BG black stuff is what created this environment back here. We could also theoretically add the onClose method to this top level div to make sure that this modal could also possibly be closed if they click on the dark screen around the modal itself and not just the cancel button. So yeah, immediately we have a much nicer looking confirmation than that window prompt right there. We can see that the modal is being populated correctly out here, or rather, there's nothing out here. Ooh, it looks like my remove element is not working the way I thought it was, because every time I keep opening a modal, it adds another div, doesn't it? But we can see it is being rendered outside of our root parent, which is really cool. Like I said, now we're thinking with portals. Yeah, so check it out. This is our element being added to the page. Like I said, this is that dark opacity screen we're seeing back there, so we could theoretically also add the onClose method to this. So if a user clicks on the dark screen, it'll also cancel the modal. I mean, that'll be a very simple fix right here. Or not fix, but you know what I mean. On click will also fire handle or on close, right? That way we can have it also close out right there. So let's see if that works the way I think it does. Yeah, so we can also cancel the modal right there when it is clicked. So yeah, pretty cool. I'm curious as to why the cleanup is not working the way that I expect here. I'll look into that off camera rather than having to edit this and chop this up as I try and figure it out. But we can always switch from append child to, I think, replace children as a possibility. That way we can just replace in the current div instead of creating a new one over and over again. I don't think creating this as a use ref or something like that's going to help us, but let's see if this at least fixes this problem. This annoying propagation, this annoying creation of divs. Yeah, okay, so we're left with that empty div element in our tree there. Not that big of a deal. It is what it is. But at least now that the modal is appearing this way, it doesn't constantly create new divs annoyingly, so we don't have that kind of like issue. Not that I don't think creating even like 100 divs, empty ones, are going to be an issue, other than making the HTML look nasty and possibly your app not work as expected. But that's not that big of a deal. In terms of how we can change things up here, to try and make it a bit more, compartmentalized, this could be our modal content, which means I could always come down here and move these to be the children. So I'd have to render these from the delete notes page. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and say render our children here to see if that works as expected, which means I can now get rid of this button reference, leave that as is. Children now definitely need to be required. There we go. And we can leave the onConfirm here. Yeah, I mean, we can leave it there. That's fine. Back out here, we need to have some children for this thing to render, which means I'll actually close these, fire that up, paste that in there. There we go. Now, these onClicks... Yeah, these onClicks here don't need to do... I mean, I can just pass in the same things, where set the onClose could just be setting the modal to be false like that. Righto. So again, like, now that I've chosen to do it this way on camera and deviated from my notes, of course things get nasty. I should have just said we're making a specific modal and then generalized it later, but no, I gotta make things complicated for myself, don't I? Because the onConfirm out here needs to be what this former code up here that we've commented out was. So yeah, we can call this maybe open delete modal for the button that causes that, and move this to Get rid of the if statement, leave the note service alive, like so, and move it down here to be a handle delete on its own once again. So fire that off. Same kind of event in case we need it in here. And then instead of just navigate to notes, I will say navigate to notes, but also set modal show to false in here. And there we go. That way the handle delete function can still run as expected on closing our modal. So there we go. Yeah, so now, given that the modal doesn't have the buttons inside of here anymore and just uses the children from the outside, I guess I can merc these two particular properties since they're not going to be useful to me in this case. All this thing's I still need an on-close because I want to make sure that ability to close the modal from clicking on the outside of it still remains as a possibility. I think that's fairly important. But I can now get rid of onConfirm, considering the confirm is going to be handled by the children. It tends to wrap and render. That way the modal is very modular. It displays the modal correctly, and it will leave it to the component displaying it to provide the logic of when it should be shown, not shown, and what it should do in the event that we want to confirm it here. So all this to say, does this finally work the way I expect it to? Cancel. Cancels correctly. Note stinks. Close it. Not adding more divs. Just a nice little bonus feature, not bugged anymore. And it still confirms and deletes the notes successfully. So there we go, folks. We built ourselves a modal without a library. There were some bumps along the way, but that is to be expected in this learning journey we're all on together. Yeah. I mean, I could always put in the buttons, like, say the children is going to be the modal content, and then move. I like how I'm already triple guessing myself. Welcome to development, y'all. This is how it is. Move these as action buttons back into the modal beneath the child, because there's probably going to always have those two buttons. I hate myself. Hey. All right, so let's see. Because I don't have to. I can leave the button text as is. Right, so that part will stay the same. Now we're back to having both on close and on confirm. Back in action, folks. Why do I torture myself so, y'all? I want to know. This goes back to on close. Confirm, cancel, those can stay there as is. Bring the button back in from the bouton file, like so. Okay. Now, these can be nuked once again. All I need to do is provide on confirm will run the logic of handle delete. Now I can merc that contents. That way the modal body right there is the... Oh, because I told it wouldn't expect to be an event type. That's right. So hold on. The handle delete button click is technically happening on a button with an event coded on it. So I'm going to say if the event is needed, it's going to be there, and that should fix that error. Basically, it was telling me that, hey, my function has a argument of the React mouse event on the HTML button element, which is technically correct. So I added it as an argument in my TypeScript type there. It's still returning nothing, so the void shouldn't change. But let's go ahead and see if this works here. I'm going to write a few more notes here to delete. Add note, write, jot that down. Okay, so in our list here, let's check it. Technically, did it appear as a child? I didn't think I put it in there. I thought it was separate. Oh, it's sibling to the children. So let's move this down like that, and that should correct the issue. I'm a CSS wizard, folks. Hey, there we go. Okay. Let's go. All right. Now for the 40th minute here, 39th minute, we have a modal that is actually modular. We can pass it some custom modal style content, so we can customize what this modal says. We can customize when it's being shown. We can customize what it will confirm once it happens, and it is all looking good. It is importable and usable into multiple spaces across our application. Probably anywhere we're going to be deleting something, this modal will be brought in place of that, right? I mean, heck, we can even move this stuff inside of here to make it consistent looking by having these be properties of the, oh my god, the modal and not rendering any children. So we can have the option to render children, and we can always have the title and subtext be like props on the modal itself, and then any additional children would appear below the title, subtitle text, and then above the buttons themselves. But if you want to do that, go for it. I'm tired of this thing. We're done here. I want to continue on this video because, like I said, I was hoping I would have time to cover some additional things in Postman I'm going to set up to get ready for the next feature, because we're going to start adding, because right now it says your notes, but as you know, no matter who writes them, like we've been using this guest user here. We haven't gone here in a while, but oh yeah. So let's say I run a select star from users real quick. We have 3 users here. We have our guest user and we have 2 test users of last name register and last name test. So what happens if one of these individuals writes a note? Let's go find out. Back here in Postman, you probably don't have a lot of the tabs open unless this is the only time you've ever used Postman or whatever tool you're using. I haven't touched it in a minute, so I'm going to open these tabs to see where we're at. So instead of guest@test.com, let's log in as test@test.com, and I think I use the same password of password123. So in the past, we would have to click send, get our response. I like how zooming in makes this worse in the layout somehow. I don't get it. There's our lovely token. So in the past, we would copy and paste this token, but there is a specific way we can actually add it. To say that, hey, when we log in and get a response, I want this saved to a variable that I can then reference in my authorization for the rest of this project, which I think is pretty cool. So instead of having to do all this copy-paste stuff, let's figure out how we can actually save this as a variable. Yeah, so to do that, we can go and make a test for this particular tab. In the test setting, in the test option of this Postman tab for logging in, we can do the following. We can say that we're going to get a JSON response from postman.response.json. So basically, the response we are getting from this test, we're going to parse the JSON response, which is this what we're looking at right here. We're going to parse it from JSON into JavaScript code. This is very similar to what you would do in a fetch request. Fetch then res.json. That's what we're doing here. This is synchronous I believe it's synchronous here in Postman, so we don't have to write any kind of asynchronous style code. But we can say pm.environment.set, and it works just like local storage. So we can say set our DnD token to be our response JSON, which is this highlighted code right here, .token. So we can say set the token to a parameter or a variable called DnD token, right? So now if I save this tab and run it, theoretically it set that variable for me. Now to access that variable, let's go validate the token, because in the past, put DnD token on copy paste, folks. In the past, we would have to paste our token in here constantly, which would be very annoying to do as we keep on going between. As you can see, you can also set a variable with point and click. But to access a variable here in Postman, we can just do double curly braces and reference the token we had just set in the previous tab. So now I can verify that we are good via this user with this token. So every time I click login here, the token I get will automatically be set to a variable, which then I can now use across my tabs to quickly test things. So as of right now, like I said, we get all notes from all users. So I'm going to head to my post a new note. In authorization, instead of this, we're going to put in our DnD token variable. The body, that's fine. I don't care. We're going to go ahead and just write this note. There we go. New note created. Let's go to the front end now. Back on the front end, refresh. As you can see, we are now seeing notes from both test and guest, which is probably not how this application should work. If you're logged in as the guest user, you should see only your notes. If you're logged in as the test user, you should only see your notes. Should not be seeing everyone's notes. So it's already 45 minutes. Yeah, I want to leave it at the modal here, and the little improvement we're going to have, the small improvement we just made to our authorization process in Postman testing, so we can quickly test these, right? Details, that's new. I'll go ahead and go to all of my tabs that had the, what's it called? The token hard written in there, and replace them really quick with our new method of saving said token quickly into a variable. So there we go. We can do the same thing for like the ID. We can make like an ID variable to quickly reference them across these routes here dynamically like that, which would be very important and cool. But yeah, I wanted to set that up here for y'all just so y'all could see how to add a very nice quality of life improvement into the Postman tabs we had set up a long time ago to quickly log in as a different user and begin posting as that user rather than having to copy and paste the token over and over and over again. But that leads us up to what the next video will be, which will be making out like a simple profile page and making it so you only see your notes on this page and not all notes on this page, as that's not probably something we want to have happen. Yeah, so I'll see y'all in the next video where we cover our, finally, a new feature, because all this time has been messing with our original CRUD application features, which means I can probably go and add a new feature to our key features list of saying you can only read your notes now. So yeah, I'll see y'all there. That wraps it up for this. Remember, all the choices I've made in this entire tutorial are not the be-all, end-all of coding decisions. Every choice we make in programming comes with various trade-offs, and there's different ways to approach a problem. I hope these tutorials and this course has been serving y'all as a great starting point, as an inspiration for a DnD flavor, inspiration, to explore various things and to find methods that suit your needs for whatever you want to build, right? We're all learning here, and we're undoubtedly going to find better ways to do things we've yet to discover. I look at projects I wrote 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh, this is trash, like this one. And I know I could do better, but at the same time, I'm here to teach y'all a good fundamental concept of how these full stack CRUD applications work, right? So if you enjoyed this video and found it useful, do me a favor, go and like this video, leave me a nice comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see more like this. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and happy coding, y'all.